So this is the theory of change, okay? And this is the exercise we're going to do today. So like I mentioned, you are setting up your activities. Then those activities leads to outputs. Those outputs lead to outcomes, and those outcomes lead to impact. Um, the way to do it, I've seen people do this both ways, all right? Like you can start top down where you sit with your various stakeholders. So here are some key points that I should make even before getting into what a theory of change is number one, it is a living document, but at the same time, and what it means by a living document is that you can absolutely go back to your theory of change and edit it, especially as you're making operational changes around your activities, right? Um, so it is a living document, but the first version that you then start developing your key performance indicators on your KPIs, and you start developing your research questions around, you want to make sure that that is a mature version. So you do have your activities or your operations plans laid out and your theory of change is built on that. So I've seen people start from impact level where they want to first say, okay, I want to have this kind of impact. So think breadth and depth of the social change. Think what is your mission. This is where you can put your SDG statements in as well. Um, Impact is really, in terms of timing, it is very far out. Often you can see impact level changes maybe in 10, 15, 20 years. A lot of companies that we work with actually do not care about attributing to impact. They want to ensure contributions to that impact statement, because again, they want to save costs in measurement, right? So, for example, if you want what is called attribution, where you are saying, okay, X my X activity absolutely created change. You have to do very rigorous level experiments, which cost a lot of money, to be able to make that statement. But if you are saying that, okay, I want to ensure that I'm having these outcomes, and these outcomes eventually lead to these impacts, so I know I'm contributing to that impact statement, that's a lot cheaper. So think about that, like what level of attribution contribution are you comfortable with? That's always something we do with the business partners that we work with. So going back to your theory of change structure, sorry, somebody went off mute. So is there a question? Okay, I'm going to keep continuing. So um, you can start at your impact level, and there's a slide. The next slide will take you through an example. Or you can start at the activities level. I've seen people where they start at the impact level. So, for example, in one of the companies I work with, their impact level statement was, we want to improve the economic and health well-being of women in the apparel sector. So really broad, so really big mission level statement, right? That has to do with reducing poverty. So it's SDG 1. So that's what your impact statement would be. Your outcome statements. All right. So where I was going with that was they set up the impact statement, and then they started thinking about their outcome statements, but they realized, okay, they wanted to go back to laying out their activities. So people go top down, they go bottom up, they stop in the middle and say, okay, we're going to go bottom up now that we can't really fill up the outcomes and the outputs. Um, but activities are, think of your day-to-day operations, what you should be doing to create change. Those activities lead to specific outputs, right? So these are the direct results of your activities. And then these are the results I need to be able to create any change in, like I said, outcomes are knowledge, change in skills, change in attitudes, or change in behavior, right? So those are your outcomes. So those outcomes are how you create impact. Um, so I've just given you I've given you a trick over there, which is use the if and then statement, right? So the if and then statement, the way it works is, for example, let me take you through the next slide, right? So I set this example up. It's super simplified. You can have really complicated theories of change. You can have simpler theories of change. You're seeing a linear one, you can have a non-linear one. I've seen theories of change which are based on the stakeholder, because there are just so many stakeholders, especially like, for example, I saw people do theories of change in a program that was focused on improving the policing in the DRC. And because there were so many stakeholders over there, so you have the policemen, you have the community, um, you have other stakeholders, they actually created theories of change around each stakeholder. So I'm just, the point of saying that is that you can have very complicated theories of change, or you can have simpler theories of change. The goal is to be able to create a framework and a pathway to understand what are your operations that lead to what impact, right? And then build your impact measurement system around that theory of change. So this example is super simplified. Over here, you can see my impact statement is men and women in the target area are productive members of their household. So what, that's so broad. What this was this program was aimed at improving skills for youth in an Indian market. So the programs were, they were going to train the trainers so that they could scale really fast. And then they were going to conduct job skills training so that you create skills in youth that companies actually want, so that there is demand, yes, but there's also a supply of those right fit skills, right? So that is the two programs that this company was running. They had to first train the trainers. So around that, the activities was identified skilled persons who can serve as trainers, and then train the trainers themselves. The outputs of that, so these are your day-to-day activities, right? So the outputs of that are that you have skilled persons to serve as your trainers, and then the trainers themselves are trained in the material that they will then be doing the trainings of in the future. The outcomes of that you want to actually measure, this is, you of course have monitoring indicators, but you also have your outcome indicators start over here, right? So these are where you start seeing change. So trainers understand the training content. You want to actually measure, is there any change in knowledge? You can't, often you'll see companies which have, in this case, they just have number of trainers trained, but you don't know if any change has actually happened in that person's skill level, whether they can actually train other people unless you measure the outcome, which is that they understand the training content. So that's one place you want to put an indicator. The other one is trainers can successfully deliver job skill training. So what does successfully deliver job skill trainings mean? That is something, again, you sit down with your various stakeholders and you say, okay, this is what it means to us. So now let's find the right indicator or right proxies that can measure this. And so that leads to that impact, right? And I put SDG 1 because that's around poverty. SDG 5, I believe, is around gender equality, and SDG 8 is around people have good jobs and are able to earn an income in a respectful manner. So that's SDG 8. On the other hand, conduct the job skills trainings, right? So once you've trained the trainer, they are actually conducting the job skills training. So the companies had set up their modules around conduct 40-hour training. The output of that is the training conducted. Again, often you'll see businesses have number of trainings conducted and number of persons who have attended the training. But these are just output level indicators. They don't actually measure any impact or any outcome, right? So you need to actually measure the people that you train, have they actually gained the technical and vocational skills that you supposedly taught them? So you want to create some sort of survey here, for example, like you do a pre-test. That means before those folks are trained, you want to ask them a series of questions. And after the training, you want to ask them a series of questions and see the difference between those two to make sure that they've actually learned something. Trainees have positive attitudes towards all jobs. This is a kind of capability well-being indicator where you want to understand their attitude, because a positive attitude, I mean, I'm not going to go into psychology, but can help you have the right mindset to actually find a job. And then trainees have skills and resources to remain employed. So for this company, to ensure that you are having that kind of long-term impact, you want to make sure that those people continue to remain employed, not just a job for 6 months, but rather a job for 2 years where they're learning and then they want to move to another job and there's a clear career progression, right? So that's what we mean by outcomes. That's what we mean by measuring impact, outcomes and impact. Um, and um, yeah, and I think it'll get better as you start practicing this. This will get more clearer.